Hey, good morning. It's good to be together. So glad you're here. Like I said, it's not gonna lie, this is a little bit different this morning. It's a little bit different this morning, but it's a good different because if you don't know me, my name is Jordan. Ugh. Wow. I'm a part of the team around here. I hang out, and this is Krista, my wife. Everybody say hello.
Hey, gang.
Yeah. So. I mean, wow, we're here.
We've made it.
At this point,
it's an accomplishment, friends, let us tell you.
I don't know at this point if you're looking forward to the next 30 minutes that we get to share together or not, but we've made it.
I am. After spending time in worship and, getting it right.
That's good.
We're here.
Good. Honestly, we don't teach together often, so if you're new here, we don't teach together often. Normally, I'm kind of up here doing the thing, and so this week has been really, really challenging. I'm not going to lie. It has challenged our marriage, so hopefully up to this point, we're back in love with one another.
Yeah.
Okay,
good. We're getting there.
Yeah, so... we'll talk.
I thought it would be a good idea to teach together instead of me teaching alone, and now I think we're reevaluating that decision.
Definitely going to change that up. But hey, we're grateful that you're here with us this morning. I got to say, you're here for a reason, okay? And so over the next couple of moments that we have together, we're going to uncross our arms. We're going to kind of open up our hands to receive what God has, and we would want you to do the same because at the very beginning of this, I want to say where we're going is not like we have this all together. I think that's what's been the most challenging for us as we've approached this conversation this morning is we're right in the thick of it and we don't have all the answers. But what we want to do this morning is give you some truth that you can apply to your lives, that we can start applying to our lives if we've studied this, because I'm a firm believer that the Holy Spirit can and will change you, not for just this moment, but also for your Mondays and for your Tuesdays and for your Wednesdays, because if what we teach here on a Sunday morning doesn't impact that Monday morning life, we have missed the boat.
Yeah, exactly. What's the point if we're not able to extend that beyond a Sunday? So in a little bit, we're going to open up to Luke chapter 10, and we're going to look at what Jesus says about busyness. And I'm sure that all of you in the room can understand what busyness is. And we're going to talk about the grind, the hustle, whether you say it's no days off, it's soccer season, it's travel season, it's planting season, it's harvest season, it's fair season. Yeah. We've been there. We're insanely busy. And like you said, we don't have it all right. I think it's fair to say that whenever Jordan does teach or I teach or we teach together, whatever we're teaching on seems to impact us greatly the week that we're prepping for it. And so it's been wild. And a lot of you have walked with us and have seen us in sheer exhaustion.
Yeah, I mean, our life has truly kind of, it really feels chaotic at times, if you will. I don't know about your life, but our life is that way. We have two little boys. Oh, I shouldn't say little. I mean, one's a 7th grader, one's a 4th grader, and
they're not little.
Yeah, they're gonna be taller than us by next year. Let's be real. But all the things set in with life. Both boys are in sports, multiple sports. So there's the whole travel sport thing that we're gone a lot for. There's practices. One of them's in choir, and so there's choir rehearsals and performances and events. And then if you're new here, we embarked on raising two animals for 4-H. I know looking at us, you wouldn't expect us to have animals for 4-H specifically.
Looking at you, maybe me. I grew up in 4-H. So.
Specifically raising calves for 4-H, and we're going to the farm twice a day to do feeding and chores, and all of that. Not to even speak on we haven't even got to our jobs yet and the goals and the desires that we have for where we're at professionally. You sit on a board and
we're busy.
There's our friends too. And so life is just busy, life is hectic, and it truly feels chaotic at times. So we come to this point in our life where we have started to realize, and especially prepping for this conversation, that's where we're going this morning. We're talking about busyness if we haven't said it yet. And so what we begin to realize is that busyness at the end of the day will cost you something.
Yeah. And not to say that the things that we are busy with aren't things that we don't enjoy. Everything that we're doing, we're enjoying, we're committed to, we love it, but it does cost us something. Like yesterday, almost our marriage, right?
Yeah, yesterday, our marriage. Oh, my
Okay,
Lord.
let's be real for a second.
Oh, my goodness.
It was a busier week. It wasn't actually supposed to be a busier week. I have a lot on my plate professionally, so there was a lot to get done. And there's also a lot to get done for fair. We're prepping for fair. I had buyer group letters to send. We have to make thank you posters. The boys also do model projects that are due tomorrow that we haven't even started.
Yeah.
We needed to run to Costco for snacks to get us through Fair Week, and we had to go to Boot Barn to get boots and jeans for the boys for show day, all the things, right? Then there's groceries and bills and taking kids to practices and trying to make their summer fun, having friends over, and then having to write a message on busyness. And it all kind of came to a head yesterday morning. I still had to go pick up groceries, so I told Jordan, I'll go get the groceries, I'll go do chores, he can finish working on the message. All the pressure on him, right? So I go do chores, get the groceries, come home, everybody helps unload, and come back, and he literally is like, you smell like cow pee. And I'm like, okay, thanks, yeah.
Yeah, I did say that.
He did.
I did. It smelled like cow
Love you too.
urine.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm a busy person. Like, I can just keep going. So I was doing all the things around the house, trying to do all the things to make it easier for later.
Yeah.
And I think they're,
Yeah, for me, I was like a ticking time bomb. If you can imagine, like, she's very type A, just very driven, and just with anything. And so to get her to slow down even at home, like even on our rest days, is like, yeah, right. Like,
it's hard.
You don't stop, and you'll throw in. I mean, you do an incredible job, but
Thanks.
like the busyness is still there. And so I was like a ticking time bomb yesterday. If you know me, like, quick little side story, like, if you know me and how I prep for messages, like, I have my message done and wrapped by Wednesday leading up to Sunday. And here, like, by Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, like, we only had half our message written. Like, I was freaking out. And
Literally
in my mind, I was
out.
like, babe, like, are you gonna add any content to this thing? Like, you're doing all the things and being busy, and I didn't know how to, like, I didn't want to stress her out more. And so, but yesterday afternoon, I was just like, you know what, your mind is going all these other places, you're doing all the things, can you just focus on what is important? And
Laundry, it was important.
in my mind, that's what not, like, that wasn't important.
I know.
Like, this conversation was important, and there it, like, 25-minute knockout, drag out conversation later. Like, and it's so wild how that plays out, of talking about busyness, being up on this stage, having that expectation of bringing you something in here in our own lives. Like, we struggled.
We're a hot mess.
Like,
yeah.
24 hours ago, right?
Well,
And
even this morning a little bit too. Let's just be real, okay?
Yeah, no doubt. But life feels rushed at times, and I'm telling you, maybe you haven't said it in a while, but you're busy as well. I mean, not just look at our lives, but you're busy as well. And I think what we've come to, kind of this thought, is that busyness will cost you something. Just looking strictly at us, like, busyness costs us something.
Yeah.
Like, we lose closeness when we're busy. There's moments where I don't feel like we're on the same page. Like, even with the simplest decisions, it's like, what are we even doing? And married folks in here, you might have said it before. Have you ever said, like, it just feels like we're roommates right now? Like, we've said that.
Yeah, we've been there for sure.
And you go on, like, date days. We can't do date nights because we're just, again, busy. So we do date days, and, like, you sit down in a restaurant and you're sitting down and, like, you're just communicating and leave it to Krista to be like, all right, so let's go over what next week looks like. And then you're just like, oh, can we just get a break from it all?
Listen, I'm type A. Like, I need to know the plan. I need to know how we're going to survive the week, right? In my head, like, if I don't have an idea of what the week looks like and how we're going to get through it, like, I'm all sorts out of place. But we literally don't have time to rest. We don't have time to reflect.
Yeah.
We literally sometimes just don't have time.
I brought home this book. Our men some of the guys in Restore did a book study on John Mark Comer's the ruthless elimination of hurry. So I brought home that book. It was laying around the office, and of course I just kind of flipped through it, and I said, hey, you should flip through it, because again, we don't have time to like read a whole entire book right now. So we were flipping through it, but there were some points. I started highlighting some things, and John Mark Comer, he used this Dallas Willard quote that really brought this whole idea, this busyness concept in my mind of like, wow, this really is a problem in my life or in our life. It kind of brought a new revelation for me, and maybe this might help you. John Mark, again, he used this Dallas Willard quote. He says this: hurry is the greatest enemy of spiritual life in our day. Hurry is the greatest enemy of spiritual life in our day. Now, I thought about that for a second. I'd be like, hurry? Like, to me, hurry wouldn't even been in the top 5 of spiritual problems, like things that detract us from Jesus. Like, hurry wasn't even in my top 5. And so, but think about that for a moment. Hurry is the greatest enemy of spiritual life in our day. So I take that and I think, well, like it kind of makes sense. So the enemy, he doesn't have to show up with a pitchfork on our shoulder necessarily and like try to get you to cheat on your taxes or try to get you to cheat on your spouse or have a couple extra beers. Like, the enemy just wants to make you busy. It reminds me of this quote. I didn't take time to look up who it was, but it's this, that if the enemy can't make you bad, he'll make you busy.
Yep.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
So true. So there's the reality. Like, busyness, if you're taking notes this morning, busyness is the enemy, and you fill in the blank. Think about your own life. Busyness is the enemy. If we're not careful, it can be the enemy of peace. Like, it sabotages us so much that we're always thinking to the future instead of thinking in the present, and we get worried and anxious about what's coming this next week. And so quickly, busyness becomes the enemy of our peace. Busyness becomes the enemy of joy. Like, man, it can be a super heavy and hectic week in our lives, and I can so quickly, I don't know about you, but I can so quickly miss the little moments that God is using to bring joy in my life. Busyness is the enemy of relationships because, honestly, this is the big one for me. It sabotages the love that I express to others, whether it be me as a father, me as a husband, me as a pastor. Like, some of the worst moments are always found when I'm busy.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I've also learned that busyness is the enemy to intimacy with Jesus. Like, busyness will stifle my growth in Jesus because I don't have time to open my Bible. I don't have time to sit in prayer and ask God, what do you want to say to me today? The Bible sits on the nightstand.
Yep.
Or we finally turn off the daily reminders on the Bible app.
Yeah, and that's the problem with busyness there. It will begin to rob you of who God has called you to be.
And sometimes we don't even see it right away, right?
Yeah.
The enemy is in the excitement, that excitement that you get by staying an extra hour at the office and chasing that yes to a sale, or opening your calendar and you get to see all the things on your schedule. You're so popular, you have so many commitments, and then you add more commitments after more commitments. Listen though, we're not advocating laziness. We're not saying cut out of work early and don't spend time with family and friends. That's not it at all.
Yeah, we're not saying like pull your kid off the soccer team by any means.
But you need to be responsible for the things that you're called to. You need to take inventory of those things and understand that constant grind and hustle, that's where the enemy is in the excitement of you feeling like you belong. And sometimes that's when our worth, our value gets wrapped up in how many things we're a part of. And I've been guilty of that before. Like, I love to be able to say all the things that I'm invested in, but at the end of the day, what am I focusing on? So what if I told you that the grind, the hustle, the hurry, the addiction to busyness, is responsible for the ache that's inside of us, that emptiness. That this life of hurry is responsible for the spiritual dullness and the distance that we sometimes feel between us and God. And I can be the first to say that, yeah, that has happened to me.
Yeah.
And it can also be, the distance that you feel between those that you love. It can be the distance that you feel between yourself, like a disconnect, if you will, between you and your soul.
Yeah, I like what you were saying there, because there's more at stake than just like our emotional health. Okay, it's we want to feel good. We don't want to feel stressed out, but really what hangs in the balance is our spiritual life. And for us as followers of Jesus, like, that's the utmost important. And when we're busy, it distracts us from like the most important thing. We're going to open up to Luke chapter 10. I'm sure you have your Bibles. I hope you do. If not, download the Bible app and follow along with us. We're going to go to Luke chapter 10, and we're going to look in verse 38. And you might have heard this story if you've been hanging around church long enough. It's a story of Mary and Martha. And I think that Jesus has something for us. The Holy Spirit has something for us this morning in these words we're about to look at.
Yeah, so in Luke 10, verse 38, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her.
So let's get some context here. Like I said, you might have heard this story before, but if not, Mary and Martha, they're sisters, okay? And what we have is that there's this close relationship between them and Jesus. You can read more about kind of their life and how they are so close with Jesus in the gospel, in John's gospel, okay? But we know them as Mary and Martha here, and what we see is that Jesus comes to town, okay? He comes to town and he comes to Martha's house. Now, as you were reading that, like, I like to think that Martha, okay, play along with me. Like, Martha has it all together, okay? She's a homeowner, okay? She's proactive. She's always doing something.
She's me.
She's always doing something. I like to think of Martha as a little bit of a perfectionist. Like, she can't settle until everything is just perfect. And for me, I can relate to that for sure. I'm guessing she's a pretty dang good host, okay? Like, people want to come to her place. She's got the snacks. She has all the stuff because she's so focused on pleasing other people. And then there's Mary. She's quite interesting. She's probably this free thinker, maybe a little bit artsy, okay? She's maybe a little bit flighty at times. Like, you just don't know with Mary. Like, you invite Mary down to, like, Venturi to grab some pizza. She might show up. She might not. Not really sure. Like, maybe she's kind of freeloading it off of Martha's couch. That's where she's kind of hanging out. And so, if we look at verse 38 again, it says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way. So, Jesus is coming town. He came to the village where a woman named Martha opened up her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat down at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. So there's this contrast between Mary and Martha. And I've heard this story before, and I like to think that I paint this picture of Mary in my mind, but another translation says it this way in verse 39. Mary, who was also seated at the Lord's feet, was listening to his word. That word also is a little bit different of a picture than what I've heard Mary kind of pictured as. Like, For me, I can just envision Mary, just away from doing all the work. Like that's just Mary being Mary. But that word also really points to, some would argue that, no, she was there ahead of time. She did the work. But when it came to the guests actually coming into her house, like that was her priority at that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't about all the other stuff to keep doing and
Right.
perfect and get accomplished. Like once the guests came in the house, like that was the most important
Yeah,
thing.
she understood the importance. She wasn't distracted.
Yeah, so we see she sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. And doing a little bit of study there, when Luke uses the word that she sat at the Lord's feet, really what Luke is meaning is that Mary in this moment is being a true disciple. And disciple meaning that like she's a student, like she's listening, she's studying off of a person. The Apostle Paul kind of describes this as well in Acts 22. He says that his time as a student was under a training of Gamal, okay, if you will. He says it in Acts 22:3 that I was brought up at the feet of Gamal, saying that I sat at his feet. I learned from him. I listened to him. And so this was the same with Mary. She was at the feet of Jesus. And she was learning. She was listening. She was really a student of Jesus in that moment.
Right. And maybe Luke meant that she literally was sitting at his feet, maybe figuratively. Regardless, what we do know is that Mary was choosing to listen and to learn. She was learning from what Jesus was saying. She gave her complete focus to him in that moment. And in verse 40, again, it says, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made.
Yeah, like look at that word. She was what? What does the Bible say? She was distracted, yeah. Like all the stuff that had to be done.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with getting all the things done, right? There's nothing wrong with doing work for Jesus, right? I hope not. But there is a cost to the busyness. Because Martha's problem wasn't that she was working hard for Jesus. Martha's problem was she was distracted with all of the stuff. Martha's problem was Martha. And the word distracted, translated in Greek, has the meaning of being pulled or dragged in different directions. And I mean, as Jordan said earlier, obviously I'm 100% a Martha. Does anybody else in the room resonate with that?
You don't have to raise your hands, but you
well,
can
yeah.
nudge
I mean,
the
you
person
could just make me feel better.
that if you know that they are, give them an extra one of these.
It's easy to be distracted.
Yeah.
When there's not anything to do, I can find something to do, which I feel like is Martha in this.
I was, y'all, I'm like going on 4 hours of sleep from last night because I was up super late kind of putting final touches. Maybe I was a Martha in this whole message last night. Maybe that's the revelation I need this morning. Oh my goodness, I just put that together. But I was thinking last night, what was driving Martha's busyness? What was driving her distraction? Well, we'll get there in a second, but in verse 41, it says that she was worried about many things. And for me, I would like to think that Martha, like her distraction was probably driven off of fear, which I think is a lot of our busyness and our distraction, that it's driven off of fear. Like, if we don't have all these things in our schedules, like, are we really that important? Do people value us? Like, or who else is going to do it? So I'm going to do it. Like, I know best, so I'll just do it. Or maybe you're trying to please people. Or maybe you're trying to prove yourself to somebody else. Maybe it's like, I know this is probably true in some of you, like it's keeping up with everybody else. And that's just for us. Like, I haven't even talked about what that does, like, to our boys. Maybe that you focus on these things because you think of the future, that there'll be this deficit in the future, and so you need to focus on it right here and right now. But Martha goes on, and honestly, this next part is really, I can see like one of our boys saying this about the other. Like, don't you care that my sister or my brother has left me to do this work all by myself? Like, Mom, Dad, tell him to do something. Like, I can hear our boys saying that.
Oh, we hear it all the time, Mason.
But the question is, but the question isn't like what needs to be done. The question is, what does Jesus want from me?
Right.
That's really the question. And Jesus' response is basically this, like, Martha, come be with me. Martha, your problem isn't Mary. Mason, your problem isn't your brother Braden, okay? But for Martha, the problem really is you. Like, you're doing good, you're wanting to serve, you're wanting to host, but Martha, you are missing the most important part of being a host. It's being with the guest that is in your home. And busyness, it distracts you from the most important thing. The one thing that Martha was missing in that moment was simply this. Like, Jesus, I'm right here sitting at your feet. I'm ready to learn from you. I'm right here. Pour into me. That's what she was missing. And I think, like, this is where Luke, again, the writer of all this, is what he's pushing us, but maybe you as well, is to examine our lives. And look, we don't have it all together. Like, we lost our stuff yesterday.
Yep.
Like, we're far from it.
Yeah.
But there's honestly, like, I think a couple of truths that we can pull from Luke's writings here and what Jesus is specifically saying to us.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, Luke is trying to push us to examine our lives. Yeah. So how do we do that? How do we slow down? And when you
be about the most important
yeah, how do you
thing.
focus on the most important thing? And sometimes I think we need to be reminded of this important thing. When you sit at the feet of Jesus, that's where you'll find rest. And one of the things that I believe most of us need to be reminded of, including us, especially this week, is that rest is a requirement to living, and learning to find that rest, that life-giving rest, that's only going to come when we sit at the feet of Jesus. In Matthew 11:28-38, Jesus says this, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." And I'm sure I can speak for most of us in this room that when we try to do all the things on our own without stopping and finding the rest, without refueling with Jesus' love and God, it doesn't always turn out well. Like, we end up becoming more tired. I feel like that's when busyness really takes hold of our emotions. We become stressed out, we're overwhelmed, we're moody. We're bogged down with busyness, and that's also when I feel like our mind, our guards are down, and our spirit and our emotions can't fully function due to the weight that we're trying to carry on our own, And that, from there, is when that's when it can spiral. That's when anxiety can creep in. That's when depression can creep in. That's when fear and hopelessness, name it, like whatever it is. Like, when you are so busy and so distracted, you're not thinking, you're not focusing, you're just kind of going on autopilot, that's when all the ick starts to creep in. And a lot of times we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't realize it until after the fact that we've, yelled at our husband for putting too much on our plate or.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what Gene and Brenda were saying last week, but we come to this point and we look at our lives and we have this expectation of what it should look like. Okay, I'm 36 years old. Every time I'm on the stage, I feel like I always got to rattle off my age.
You always shout out your age.
It's weird.
I'll be 42 this week, okay?
Yeah, no doubt. You got more shout outs than what I did. But it's honestly stripping away what you expect your life to look like.
Right.
And once you come to that submission of sitting at Jesus' feet, I don't know what that looks like in your life. I don't know how that translates. I don't know if that's you sitting on the bed at night or on the couch at night and just saying, hey, Jesus, like, speak to me. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that's worship for you and singing praises where the Holy Spirit kind of does something inside of you. But for me, and for us, it's really stripping away what you think it should look like.
Yeah. Maybe it's a 2-minute car ride down the road and you just talk to the Father then. You know, they're the expectations.
Yeah.
Strip them away and just spend time with him. Just come to him. It's just so simple.
Yeah. What's so beautiful is that when we allow ourselves to kind of sit with Jesus, I know that's going to be hard for some of us. But when we allow ourselves to sit with Jesus, he's going to do something in you. More and more, you're going to be filled up.
Yeah.
That goes into point number 2. He's going to fill you up for the things that you actually are responsible for and to give life to. Like whoever and whatever God has placed in front of you, that you're operating from an overflow of spending time with him. And the second point I think we take from this is being obedient to what God has called you to remember to be obedient to the places, to the people that God has called you to, which sounds probably like adding more to your plate. But I think what we all need to do in this life of hurry and busyness and distraction is to re-examine our lives, kind of prioritize what's the most important thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because that's what he's telling to Martha here. Like Mary has chosen the one thing. And so maybe for you, that's prioritizing of putting Jesus and spending time with him back at the top. Maybe then it's prioritizing, you know what? God has placed me next to this person at the office. God has placed me with this friend group. God has placed me at this lunch table with these people. God has specifically placed you in certain areas that you can only be at. You're the one that's responsible for it. And so much we start to add all the other stuff to our plate, all the other things that we lose focus from the things that are most important.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when the enemy distracts you. He's going to rob you from the places and the people that you are called to impact. Like Jordan said, those are things that only God has placed in you for you to do.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, like, are you being obedient to the places and the spaces that God has put you in? Like, maybe put it a little bit differently, like, what are the things that only you can do? And so we strip away all the other stuff, like, this is the most important. So don't let the enemy distract you. Don't let the enemy rob you from the places and spaces that you are meant to impact, y'all. Like, what are the things that only you can do?
And we could give you many examples of how busyness can impact your life. We can tell you how saying yes to this or no to this can have consequences on you, your family, your friends, how mindlessly scrolling through social media can lead to emptiness. But the heart behind what we're trying to share with you is what we're currently experiencing in our own lives. We get super busy. Yeah. And we get tired and we get run down. So for us to change how we respond to that busyness, we had to realize how much more time we needed to sit and just be present, and not just with each other, but with Jesus, ultimately, because there is no endurance, there's no peace, there's no joy in what we're doing if we're not doing it with Jesus filling us up.
I was really challenged in this conversation to bring you thoughts of, like, here's the places and spaces to say no to. And that's good. I think that's a right conversation to have, but honestly, the most important thing, like, how could we look past the most important thing? And that's to be with Jesus. And that's what we want to drive you to. Yeah. I think when we're with Jesus and get that right expectation, and we're in that space where he begins to fill us up, we'll start understanding the things that need to fall off.
Right.
Because we're putting our priority in him first.
Exactly. And the reality is life is busy. And so we have to be able to see clearly and see what he wants us to do.
Yeah. Would you stand with us this morning? The band's going to lead us in the next couple moments together, and I challenge you to kind of close this message. So whether that's through prayer and kind of some final thoughts, the prayer team in just a minute is going to be up front. I don't know how this lands with you. Our heart was to point you to Jesus. And so maybe there's some things that you need to talk through with somebody, and that's what our prayer team's for. They're here to encourage you. They're not here to condemn you or look down on you. They're here to be hope and light and hear what you have to say and point you to Jesus. So if that's something that you need, in just a moment, our prayer team is going to be down front. But I know you have some questions maybe for us to kind of ponder here over the next couple moments.
Yeah, as we step into these next couple songs as the team leads us, I would just encourage you all to close your eyes. Close your eyes, shut out all the busyness that is happening in your head, because I know that it's there. And I want to just have you ask yourself some of these questions that Jordan and I have asked ourselves this week specifically. Number one, how is the enemy trying to rob you? What are the things that are causing you to run on empty? Take inventory of those things. And from there, how can you position yourself daily in order for God to fill you up? Is it going on a walk, just you and Jesus? Is it sitting on the porch, just listening to the beauty of the birds and knowing that he's in it? Is it changing the things that you're listening to while you're driving your kids to and from practice? There are so many opportunities for you to just step back, come to the Father, find rest in him, and let him fill you up. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to go ahead and step into worship. But Father, we just thank you so much for your beautiful gift that you've given us, just of life and love. God, we thank you that your burden is easy. God, we thank you that you have given us a spot to come to you, to rest at your feet, to sit and breathe you in, God, and to be filled up and refueled. God, we know the days are busy and life is chaotic, but when you're in it, when you're our focus, when you become the most important thing, God, we know that everything else will fall into place beautifully. So this morning, we ask that you will just come rest your sweet spirit on us. Show us where we need to spend more time with you. Show us where we need to take inventory and reevaluate what we're focusing on and ensuring that our focus is solely on your goodness. We love you, Jesus.